Imagine you're standing in front of two buildings. The first wall is impressive, tall, uniform, built by a professional construction company over months. Every brick perfectly placed. It represents a major brand. Years of advertising, millions of dollars invested, a polished image. The second building's wall is shorter, maybe a little uneven. It was built by a person you just met at a networking event. They handed you a business card, looked you in the eye, and told you about the problem they solve. Here's the question. Which wall do you trust more? If you're like most people, you might actually trust the second wall, the person, more quickly than the brand. And that tells us something fundamental about how trust actually works in business. I'm Jason Hager, and this is the Gray Leaf Media Podcast. Today, we're talking about trust walls, how they're built, how they're broken, and why understanding this changes everything about how you market and sell. Let me explain what I mean by a trust wall. A wall is built brick by brick. Each brick represents a trust-building action, a promise kept, value delivered, consistency demonstrated, integrity shown. Learning to make a single brick is hard work. It takes skill, effort, sweat, grit, and determination. You don't just show up and make a perfect brick on your first try. You practice, you fail, you refine your craft. And here's the thing. If you've only laid 3 bricks, maybe you've been consistent 3 times, delivered value 3 times, shown up with integrity 3 times. You don't yet have a trust wall. You have 3 bricks sitting on the ground. A wall requires enough bricks that it starts to resemble an actual structure. Something that stands, something that holds weight, something people can see and say, okay, this is real. That takes time. That takes repetition. That takes sustained effort. This is why building a brand from scratch is so brutally hard. You're starting with 0 bricks. Every interaction, every touch point, every piece of content, every customer experience, they're all bricks, and you need a lot of them before anyone trusts you enough to buy. Think about the last time you bought from a brand you'd never heard of before. You probably read reviews, other people's trust bricks, checked their website for professionalism, visual trust bricks, looked at how they'd been in the business. Time equals more bricks. Maybe even reached out to customer service to see how they responded. That's really testing the waters. You were inspecting the trust wall before you were willing to hand over your money. Any sane person would do the same. Now compare that to buying from a friend's business or from someone referred by a trusted colleague. You skipped most of those steps, didn't you? That's because you were borrowing trust from someone else, something we'll get to in a minute. Here's the brutal truth about brands. A brand doesn't love you. A brand doesn't feel warmth. A brand doesn't care about you at all. I know that sounds harsh, especially coming from someone who builds brands for a living, but it's true. A brand is a construct. It's a collection of associations, experiences, and perceptions. It's valuable, it's important, but it's not human. And that means when a brand shows up in the market, it starts with 0 trust bricks. Nothing. A blank foundation. Every piece of trust has to be earned through repeated action. Deliver a great product. Brick. Provide excellent customer service. Brick. Keep your promises. Brick. Show up consistently. Brick. Communicate clearly. Brick. Handle mistakes with grace. Brick. I'm sure you see a pattern by now. Each one takes time. Each one takes resources. And you need dozens, maybe hundreds of these bricks before someone who's never heard of you will trust you enough to become a customer. This is why brand building is expensive. This is why it takes years. This is why most startups struggle with customer acquisition early on. They're trying to sell before they've built enough of a trust wall. The implications. Well, what does this mean practically? Good question, right? It means your brand messaging needs to be consistent across every touch point. You're reinforcing the same bricks. It means you can't afford to cut corners on customer experience. Every bad experience removes a brick. In fact, we have a recent example. Rivian is famous for excellent customer experience. It's what they have to do to start building their brand from almost nothing. It also means content marketing, social proof, testimonials. These are all essential. They're visible bricks that prospects can inspect. It also means that patience is required. You can't rush the wall-building process. But here's where it gets interesting. There's a shortcut. And it's not a hack. It's human. Now let's talk about people. Human beings, you and me. When you meet someone for the first time, let's say at a conference or a networking event, or even in a LinkedIn direct message, you don't start at zero trust. You start with what I call Lent trust. Lent trust is the baseline level of trust we extend to each other simply because we're both human beings. It's the social contract. It's the assumption of good faith until proven otherwise. It's like someone handed you a temporary trust wall, a prop wall, if you will, and said, "Here, I'm going to assume you're decent until you prove me wrong." This is why person-to-person marketing works so powerfully. This is why direct sales teams exist. This is why field marketing events are valuable. This is why a warm introduction is worth 10 cold emails. Because people can borrow trust from our shared humanity. Let me be clear about what Lent trust is and isn't. Lent trust is a starting point, not a finish line. It is conditional and revocable. It is based on social norms and expectations. It is easier to establish in person than digitally. It is transferable through referrals and introductions. Now, that's important to also remember what Lent trust is not. It is not permanent or guaranteed. It is not the same as deep relationship trust. It is not unlimited. It can be exhausted quickly. And it's also not a substitute for actually delivering value. Think of it this way. When you meet someone at a networking event and they tell you about their business, you're willing to listen. You're open. You might even be willing to try their service if it's relevant. But if a random brand's ad pops up in your feed with the exact same offer, you scroll past without a second thought. Same offer, different trust foundation, completely different result. And this is why referrals are so powerful. When someone you trust introduces you to another person, they're essentially saying, "I'm lending you some of my trust wall to get started with this person." You're not starting at zero. You're starting at 30%, 50%, maybe even 70% trust, depending on how much you trust the person making the introduction. This is the entire foundation of networking. It's why relationships matter in business. It's why who you know still matters, despite all our efforts to democratize opportunity. Lent trust is real and it's powerful. Okay, so we've built our trust wall, brick by brick, or through Lent trust. Now, let's talk about what happens when things go wrong. Because trust walls don't just stand forever. They can be damaged, and understanding how they get damaged is critical. There are two main types of damage. The first is gradual erosion, knocking bricks off the top. This is when you knock a few bricks off the top of the wall. For example, you miss a deadline. 1 brick falls. You deliver mediocre customer service. Another brick falls. Your product quality slips. A few more bricks fall. You're inconsistent in your communication. More bricks gone. Here's the good news. If you've built a tall, solid wall, losing a few bricks off the top doesn't destroy the whole structure. The wall is still standing. Trust is damaged, but it's not gone. And critically, you can rebuild those bricks. It takes time. It takes effort. It takes acknowledgement of the mistake and recommitment to your standards, but it's doable. The wall won't look exactly like it did before. There might be visible repair work, but it can be functional and trustworthy again. And in some examples, it may be even stronger. This is the nature of most business relationships. Small trust violations happen. They're addressed. Trust is restored. The relationship continues. Then there's a second type of damage. Catastrophic collapse. This is when a single brick is removed from the wrong place. A load-bearing brick, a strategic brick, a foundational brick, and the entire wall comes down. A few examples. A major ethical violation like lying to customers, fraud, or scandal. A betrayal of core values. A company acts in direct opposition to its stated mission. Or a public relations disaster handled terribly, like doubling down instead of owning the mistake. A single decision that reveals the organization's true character, and it's ugly. When this happens, it doesn't matter how tall your wall was. It doesn't matter how many years you spent building it. The whole thing collapses. This is how reputations are destroyed overnight. This is how brands implode. This is how decades of trust can evaporate in a single news cycle. Now, understanding the difference between these two types of damage is crucial, because 1, it helps you assess risk properly. Not all mistakes are equal. 2, it guides your response. Minor damage means quick repair. Catastrophic damage is a complete rebuild. It informs your decision-making. Some shortcuts or compromises aren't worth the risk. And number 4, it shapes your crisis management strategy. Some bricks cannot be replaced. Some walls once fallen cannot be rebuilt, at least not in the same form, with the same people, under the same name. So how do you actually use this trust wall concept in your business? Let me give you some practical takeaways. For brand building, understand that you are starting from zero. Don't expect overnight trust. Focus on consistency over perfection. Repeated small bricks build walls faster than occasional perfect bricks. Make your trust-building actions visible. Testimonials, case studies, social proof, these are ways to show your wall to prospects. Protect your foundation bricks ruthlessly. Never compromise on the core values that define your brand. For sales and marketing, leverage person-to-person interactions wherever possible. Your sales team has lent trust that your brand doesn't. Use referrals and warm introductions as trust accelerators. You're borrowing wall height from existing relationships. In field marketing and events, focus on human connection first. Pitch second. You're building lent trust that converts better than any ad. Train your team to be trustworthy individuals, not just brand representatives. Their personal integrity is their greatest sales asset. For customer relationships, treat small violations seriously. Fix them fast, communicate clearly, and restore the brick. Never take actions that risk catastrophic trust collapse. When in doubt, ask, if this became public, would our trust wall survive? Build your wall tough enough that you can weather minor damage. This means over-delivering consistently. Remember that trust, once lost completely, is nearly impossible to fully restore. For product development, it means every product feature is a brick. Ship things that work. Don't release half-baked solutions. Your product is your trust wall in many ways. It's the most tangible evidence of your promises. Consistency and quality matters more than occasional brilliance. Customers need to know what to expect. When you mess up, and you will, own it, fix it, and communicate what you're doing about it. Nothing builds trust faster than acknowledging the humanity in us all. Here's what I want you to take away from this episode. Trust is not a feeling. It's not a vague concept. It's a structure, a wall built brick by brick through consistent, integrity-driven action. Brands start with no bricks. They have to earn every single one. This is why brand building is hard and why it takes time. People start with Lent trust. We extend baseline trust to each other because we're human. This is why relationships matter in business. This is why sales is still fundamentally about people. But whether you're building trust as a brand or as a person, the rules are the same. Build slowly and consistently. Protect your foundational bricks. Repair damage quickly. Never risk catastrophic collapse for short-term gain. The businesses that understand this, that treat trust as a tangible, buildable, protectable asset, are the ones that thrive long-term. The ones that don't, they wonder why their marketing doesn't work, why customers churn, why growth stalls. It's because they never built a wall, or they knocked it down themselves. So here's my challenge to you this week. Audit your trust wall. Ask yourself, how many bricks have I actually laid with my customers? Am I building consistently or sporadically? Where am I relying on Lent trust without doing the work to earn it? What are my foundational bricks, the ones I can never compromise on? And if you're in sales or marketing, ask yourself, am I leveraging my human advantage, Lent trust, or am I hiding behind the brand? Am I building person-to-person relationships that transfer trust to the business? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a message, or contact us through our contact form at grayleafmedia.com. And tell me about your trust wall, where you've built it strong, where it's been damaged, and how you've rebuilt. Next episode, we're diving into something else, probably more, on this Trust Wall series. There's a lot to unpack here. In the meantime, thank you for listening. Keep building brick by brick.